The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly around the UM's Compassion, a gleaming white vessel adorned with bold red crosses on its hull. The ship moved gracefully through the star-speckled darkness, its engines humming with a gentle rhythm that spoke of its peaceful mission. Dr. Thomas Reed stood by the observation window, his tired eyes fixed on the distant stars. At 52, his once dark hair had given way to silver strands, but his mind remained as sharp as ever. As the lead medical researcher aboard the Compassion, he carried the weight of hope for countless beings across the galaxy. "Dr. Reed, the samples are ready for your review," said a young assistant, breaking his moment of reflection. Thomas nodded and turned away from the window. "Thank you, Lisa. I'll be right there." The corridors of the Compassion buzzed with activity. Doctors, nurses, and technicians from Earth moved with purpose, their faces showing both determination and exhaustion. This was no ordinary ship. It was humanity's outstretched hand to a galaxy often torn by conflict and mistrust. In the main laboratory, Thomas carefully examined the latest results of his regenerative medicine trials. The glowing cells on the screen showed promising signs of adaptation to multiple species' genetic structures. If successful, this treatment could heal wounds that would otherwise be fatal, regardless of what planet the patient called home. "Remarkable progress, Doctor," said Captain Jane Wilson as she entered the lab. Her uniform was crisp, her posture perfect, but the dark circles under her eyes betrayed the strain of command. "Thank you, Captain," Thomas replied, straightening his back. "I believe we're close to a breakthrough. Just a few more tests and we might have something truly universal." Jane smiled, a rare sight these days. "That's exactly why this mission matters, Thomas. The galaxy needs to see humans as more than just another warring species." A sudden commotion from the engineering section interrupted their conversation. Loud banging followed by creative cursing echoed down the corridor. "That would be Marcus," Jane sighed, though there was fondness in her voice. Marcus Green was perhaps the most unusual crew member aboard the Compassion. At 35, his brilliant mind was matched only by his eccentric personality. Where most engineers favored methodical approaches, Marcus seemed to operate on instinct, and bursts of insight that often left his colleagues baffled. They found him hanging upside down from a maintenance ladder, adjusting something inside an open panel while humming an old Earth tune. "Green, what in heaven's name are you doing to my ship?" Jane called out, though without real anger. Marcus looked up, or rather, down at them with bright eyes that rarely seemed to blink enough. "Improving the power flow to the medical pods, Captain. Found a way to increase efficiency by 16%. He swung down from the ladder with surprising grace for someone who often tripped over his own feet during normal walks. 16%? Thomas asked, immediately grasping the implications. "That would allow us to treat at least 4 more patients per cycle." Marcus nodded enthusiastically, his unruly brown hair bouncing with the movement. "Exactly. And it reduces strain on the backup systems, too. Win-win." Jane studied the odd engineer. While his methods were unconventional, his results were undeniable. "Just make sure you log all modifications properly this time, Green. Last month's improvement to the water recycling system had unexpected side effects." Marcus had the good grace to look slightly embarrassed. "The blue drinking water was perfectly safe, Captain. Just visually surprising." As they spoke, the ship's communication officer, Robert Lee, approached with a concerned expression. "Captain, we're receiving distress signals from multiple sources in the Cairo sector. At least 3 different species requesting medical aid." Jane's face grew serious once more. "What's the nearest signal?" "A mining colony on Veros Prime. They're reporting some kind of industrial accident with hundreds injured." "Set course immediately," Jane ordered. "Dr. Reed, prepare your teams. We may need all hands on deck for this one." Thomas nodded and hurried away, already mentally cataloging the supplies they would need. The Verosians had a unique biology, silicon-based rather than carbon, which would require special consideration. Unknown to the crew of the Compassion, their change of course had not gone unnoticed. 3 sleek dark vessels adjusted their own trajectories, maintaining a careful distance as they shadowed the human hospital ship. Inside the primary shadow vessel, Cold eyes watched the Compassion through advanced tracking systems. The commander of the Vex surveillance fleet, Dren, observed the human ship with growing unease. "They change course again," he reported to his superior via secure channel. "Moving toward Veros Prime now." The response was immediate. "Continue observation. Do not engage unless ordered." Dren acknowledged the command, but his discomfort remained. These humans troubled him. Their technology was inferior to that of the Vex, yet they expanded their influence across the stars not through conquest, but through these healing missions. It defied the natural order as the Vex understood it. The strong survived by dominating the weak, not by helping them. Most troubling were the rumors of new medical technologies being developed aboard the human vessel. Technologies that could upset the careful balance of power the Vex had established over centuries. Back aboard the Compassion, Marcus had returned to his workstation, surrounded by screens filled with diagnostic data and half-finished designs. Unlike his colleagues, his workspace was chaotic, with tools and components scattered across every surface. Yet he could find anything he needed in seconds, as if the chaos followed a pattern only he could see. Marcus paused his work and glanced toward the viewport, his expression suddenly serious. For a brief moment, the constant whirlwind of thoughts in his mind quieted, replaced by an odd sensation, a feeling of being watched. "Something's not right," he murmured to himself, his fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on his console. Marcus had always trusted his instincts, especially when they warned of danger. He ran a quick scan of nearby space, but the ship's civilian-grade sensors showed nothing unusual. After a moment's hesitation, he decided against reporting his concerns. Captain Wilson already had enough to worry about with the upcoming rescue mission, and he had no actual evidence of any threat. As the Compassion accelerated toward Veros Prime, the crew prepared for what they believed would be another routine, humanitarian mission. None of them suspected that they were heading toward an event that would forever change the course of galactic history, or that the unassuming, eccentric engineer among them would soon reveal abilities that would astonish friends and enemies alike. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and the universe held its breath for what would come next. The Compassion dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Veros Prime, its white hull gleaming against the backdrop of the dusty red planet. The mining colony's distress beacon pulsed steadily, guiding the hospital ship toward the settlement. On the northern hemisphere, life signs confirmed at the colony, reported Robert Lee from his communications station. "Their medical facilities are overwhelmed. They're clearing a landing zone for our shuttle teams now." Captain Jane Wilson nodded, her face set with determination. "Dr. Reed, prepare 3 medical teams for immediate deployment. We'll maintain orbit and use the shuttles for transport." "Already on it, Captain," Thomas replied, his team gathering supplies behind him. "We've prepared treatment protocols for silicon-based life forms. The mining accident involves some kind of toxic gas exposure." As the crew of the Compassion prepared for their rescue mission, the 3 Vex vessels that had been shadowing them maintained their distance using advanced cloaking technology to remain undetected by the human ship's sensors. Aboard the lead Vex ship, Commander Dren received new orders. The text scrolled across his screen, causing his gray skin to pale slightly. "Confirm these orders," Dren requested, his voice tense. "We are to attack a medical vessel? This violates all galactic conventions." The face of Admiral Krav appeared on the screen, eyes cold and unblinking. "The orders stand, Commander. Our intelligence confirms that the humans are developing biotechnology that threatens Vex supremacy. Their healing is merely a cover for weapons development. But sir, if we're wrong, the High Command has decided." Admiral Krav cut him off sharply. "The human vessel represents an existential threat to our dominance. You will carry out your orders immediately." The connection terminated, leaving Dren with his doubts and his duty. After a moment of hesitation, he turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare all systems for attack. Target their engines and communication array first." Back on the Compassion, Marcus Green sat in the engineering bay, still troubled by his earlier sense of unease. He had modified one of the sensor arrays without authorization, boosting its sensitivity beyond standard specifications. The captain would probably reprimand him for it later, but something kept telling him they needed better awareness of their surroundings. The modified sensor suddenly beeped, drawing his attention. "That's not right," he muttered, seeing energy readings where there should be empty space. "Computer, analyze these readings." "Analysis complete," the computer responded. "Energy signature consistent with cloaked vessels. Pattern matches Vex." "Technology." Marcus's eyes widened. "Vex? Here?" He quickly hit the comm button. "Bridge, this is Green in engineering. We've got company. Cloaked Vex ships." On the bridge, Jane barely had time to process Marcus's warning before the first blast hit the Compassion. The ship shuddered violently, throwing unprepared crew members to the floor as alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Shields up!" Jane shouted. Though she knew the Compassion's defensive capabilities were minimal, hospital ships weren't built for combat. "All hands, brace for impact." A second blast struck the ship, more powerful than the first. Sparks flew from damaged consoles as the lights flickered. "Direct hit to our main engine," reported the helmsman, fingers flying across his control panel. "We're losing power." Jane grabbed the comm. "This is Captain Wilson of the UEMSS Compassion. We are an unarmed medical vessel on a humanitarian mission. Please cease fire immediately." Her only answer was another devastating hit that knocked out their communications array. The bridge view screen showed 3 Vex warships decloaking around them, their weapons glowing as they prepared another volley. In the medical bay, Thomas Reed and his team were thrown against walls and equipment as the ship took hit after hit. "Secure the research samples," Thomas shouted over the chaos. "Get everything into the emergency containment units." A young doctor named Lisa managed to reach the storage units, frantically transferring the precious research materials into shielded containers. "Dr. Reed, what's happening? Why would anyone attack a hospital ship?" Thomas shook his head, helping an injured nurse to her feet. "I don't know, but we need to protect our research. It could help thousands of species across the galaxy." Meanwhile, in engineering, Marcus worked with unnatural calm amidst the crisis. While others panicked around him, his mind seemed to shift into a higher gear. Time appeared to slow as he analyzed their situation, calculating probabilities and solutions faster than should be possible. "Reroute emergency power to medical systems and life support," he instructed his team. "Forget the weapons. We don't have any worth mentioning anyway. Focus on keeping people alive." A young engineer stared at him in confusion. "But shouldn't we try to run or fight back somehow?" Marcus shook his head. "The Vex outgun us by a factor of at least 50 to 1. Running or fighting would just get us killed faster." His eyes showed no fear, only intense concentration. "Our best chance is to survive long enough for help to arrive." Another blast rocked the ship, knocking out the main lights. Red emergency lighting cast an eerie glow throughout the vessel as Marcus continued working, his hands moving with precise efficiency. On the bridge, Jane clung to her captain's chair as the ship's systems failed one by one. "Status report. Main engines offline. Backup power at 43% and falling. Hull breaches on decks 3, 4, and 7, reported her first officer, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Captain, they're launching boarding pods." Jane's face hardened. "All personnel, this is the captain. Vex boarding parties incoming. Non-combat personnel proceed to designated shelter areas. Security teams to boarding points. Remember your training." Across the ship, the crew of the Compassion, doctors, nurses, scientists, and support staff, faced the unthinkable. Their mission of mercy had somehow made them targets, and now they found themselves defenseless against an enemy known for their ruthlessness. The first boarding pod attached to the hull with a metallic clang that echoed through the damaged corridors. Cutting torches flared as the Vex forced their way inside. The ship's small security team took up defensive positions, their light weapons seeming pitiful against the advanced armor of the boarding party. In engineering, Marcus heard the sound of fighting drawing closer. He quickly accessed a terminal, copying critical ship data into a small portable device which he slipped into his pocket. Something told him this information might prove vital in the days to come. Everyone out, he ordered his team. Get to the emergency shelters. As his team evacuated, Marcus remained behind for a few extra moments, making final adjustments to the ship's systems. He programmed the computer to erase certain sensitive data rather than let it fall into Vex's hands. As he worked, a strange clarity came over him, a sense that all his life had been preparation for this moment. The sound of weapons fire just outside the engineering bay doors told him time had run out. As the doors began to melt under Vex's cutting tools, Marcus slipped into a maintenance tunnel, his mind already formulating plans within plans. The compassion, once a symbol of humanity's compassion and hope, now drifted damaged and invaded, its mission of healing violently interrupted. And yet, unknown to the Vex attackers, their unprovoked assault had awakened something they could not have anticipated. The true potential of an unstoppable human genius, who would soon change everything. The holding cells aboard the Vex command ship were cold and dimly lit, designed to break the spirit as much as contain the body. The captured crew of the Compassion sat huddled together, many still wearing their white medical uniforms now stained with blood and soot. Captain Jane Wilson moved among her people, checking injuries and offering quiet words of encouragement. Though captured, she maintained her dignity and authority, becoming a center of strength for the frightened crew. "Has anyone seen Dr. Reed?" she asked, keeping her voice low to avoid drawing the attention of the Vex guards. "He's in the high-security section," whispered Robert Lee, the communications officer. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. They seemed especially interested in the medical research team. Jane nodded grimly. The Vex had been surprisingly careful not to kill the human crew during the boarding, which meant they wanted something. That something likely involved Thomas's research. In another section of the Vex ship, Thomas Reed sat alone in an interrogation room. His hands were bound to the table with energy restraints that hummed with a faint blue light. The door slid open and Commander Dren entered, followed by 2 guards. "Dr. Reed," Dren said, his voice artificially translated to English. "I hope you are prepared to cooperate. It will make things easier for everyone, especially your crew." Thomas looked up, his face showing exhaustion but not fear. "I'm a doctor. My work is meant to heal, not harm. I don't understand why you've attacked us or what you want from me." Dren placed a datapad on the table. "Your research into regenerative medicine. Our intelligence suggests it has applications beyond healing. We believe it can be weaponized." Thomas laughed bitterly. "That's what this is about? You attacked a hospital ship because you think we're developing biological weapons?" He shook his head. "You've made a terrible mistake." "We shall see," Dren replied coldly. "You will provide full access to your research data. Our scientists will determine its true purpose." Meanwhile, in the general holding area, Marcus Green sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, appearing to anyone watching as if he were meditating or perhaps retreating into his mind to escape their dire situation. The reality was far different. Behind his closed eyelids, Marcus's extraordinary mind was working at full capacity. Since childhood, he had hidden his true abilities, playing the role of the eccentric engineer to avoid drawing attention to his intelligence that far exceeded genius level. Now, for the first time, he allowed himself to think without self-imposed limitations. He had been carefully observing the Vex ship since their capture, counting guard rotations, noting the subtle vibrations of the engines, studying the control panels whenever a door opened. His eidetic memory captured every detail, every snippet of the Vex language he heard, every piece of technology visible to him. Lisa, one of Dr. Reed's medical assistants, sat down beside him. "Are you okay, Marcus?" she whispered. "You've been sitting like this for hours." Marcus opened his eyes, and for a brief moment, Lisa caught a glimpse of something unsettling, a depth and intensity she had never seen before. Then he blinked, and the familiar, slightly awkward engineer returned. "Just thinking," he said quietly. "The Vex technology is fascinating, actually. Their energy distribution systems are unlike anything I've seen before." Lisa stared at him incredulously. We're prisoners possibly going to be executed, and you're admiring their technology. A subtle smile touched Marcus's lips. Knowledge is never wasted, Lisa. Even here. Especially here. He glanced around, then leaned closer. Have you seen any sign of Dr. Reed? They took him separately, she replied. I think they're after his research. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. The regenerative cellular technology could be revolutionary across species. The Vex might see it as a threat to their dominance. How could healing be a threat? Lisa asked. Power comes in many forms, Marcus explained. The Vex maintain their position through technological superiority and military might. But what if species they consider inferior suddenly had longer lifespans? Enhanced recovery abilities? The balance of power would shift. As they spoke, a slight tremor ran through the ship, noticeable only to someone paying extremely close attention. Marcus fell silent, his head tilting slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. What is it? Lisa asked. We've changed course, he murmured. Acceleration pattern suggests we're heading toward Vex Central Territory rather than a border outpost. Lisa's eyes widened. How could you possibly know that? Before Marcus could answer, the cell door slid open and several guards entered, scanning the prisoners. One guard pointed at Marcus. Come with us. Marcus stood calmly, giving Lisa a reassuring nod before following the guards. They led him through the ship's corridors, unaware that his eyes were capturing every detail of the ship's layout and systems. They brought him to a laboratory where several Vex scientists were examining equipment salvaged from the Compassion. To his surprise, Dr. Reed was also there, still restrained but apparently being forced to explain the human technology. This is the engineer, a Vex scientist said to Thomas. He will assist you in reconstructing the power systems for your medical devices. Thomas looked up, relief washing over his face at seeing another crew member alive. Marcus, are you hurt? I'm fine, Doctor, Marcus replied evenly, then turned to the Vex. I'll need tools and access to power specifications if you want me to make anything work. The lead Vex scientist studied him suspiciously. You seem very compliant. Marcus shrugged. I'm an engineer. I fix things. That's my job. Besides, this equipment helps people. Why wouldn't I want to make it work? His simple logic seemed to satisfy the Vex, who gestured to a workstation. Begin there. Any attempt to sabotage or create weapons will result in immediate execution. As Marcus began working alongside Thomas, he kept his movements deliberate and slightly clumsy, maintaining his facade of being merely a competent engineer. When the Vex moved out of earshot, he whispered to Thomas, Their power systems have a fundamental flaw in the containment field algorithms. They're using a base 12 calculation where a prime number sequence would be more stable. Thomas looked at him strangely. Marcus, how do you know that? And why are you telling me about alien mathematics at a time like this? Because, Marcus said, his voice barely audible as his hands continued working, I can use that flaw to our advantage, but I need your research data. Not the official version, the complete version with all your notes on cross-species application. Thomas's eyes widened. How did you know about... I've always known, Marcus cut him off gently. Your work is brilliant, Doctor, and combined with what I'm learning about Vex technology, it might be our only chance. For the first time, Thomas saw Marcus clearly, not as the odd engineer with unusual habits, but as something far more. The calm intelligence in his eyes, the precise way his hands moved, despite his pretense of clumsiness, the depth of understanding he displayed about alien technology he'd only just encountered. Who are you really, Marcus? Thomas whispered. Marcus's lips curved in a small smile. Just an engineer who sees patterns others miss. And right now, I see a pattern that might get us out of here if you're willing to trust me. After a moment's hesitation, Thomas nodded. What do you need me to do? For now, just teach me everything about your research, every detail, and when the time comes, be ready to move quickly. Marcus glanced at the Vex scientists, who were engrossed in their own work. They have no idea what humans are truly capable of. It's time they learned. As the two men worked, seemingly cooperating with their captors, a plan began to form. A plan that would soon shake the foundations of Vex dominance and change the course of galactic history. 3 days had passed since the capture of the Compassion. In the laboratory aboard the Vex vessel, Marcus Green worked with steady hands on what appeared to be a power converter for Dr. Reed's medical equipment. The Vex guards had grown accustomed to his presence, their vigilance relaxing as the human seemed focused only on his technical task. What they didn't realize was that each component Marcus touched was being subtly modified. Each circuit he repaired contained hidden alterations, invisible to standard inspections. He worked openly, hiding his true intentions behind a mask of simple cooperation. "Pass me that molecular bonder," Marcus said to Thomas, who stood nearby examining cellular samples. As Thomas handed him the tool, Marcus whispered, "Tonight, 3rd shift rotation. Be ready." Thomas gave a barely perceptible nod, his expression unchanged. Over the past days, he had witnessed Marcus's extraordinary abilities firsthand. The engineer absorbed and analyzed Vex technology at an impossible rate, identifying weaknesses and opportunities that should have taken teams of specialists months to discover. In the prisoner holding area, Captain Jane Wilson had been organizing her crew, quietly preparing them for any opportunity. She had noticed that Marcus and Thomas hadn't returned to the general cells, and while she worried for their safety, she also suspected they might be working on something important. "Captain," Lisa whispered during the dim night cycle lighting, "do you think there's any chance of rescue?" Jane considered her words carefully, aware that the Vex might be monitoring conversations. "Humanity doesn't abandon its own. We need to stay strong and be ready to act when the moment comes." What Jane didn't know was how soon that moment would arrive. In his small work area, Marcus had completed the final adjustments to what appeared to be a simple diagnostic tool. In reality, it was a device that could temporarily disrupt the Vex ship's internal security systems. The components had been gathered one by one, bits of seemingly harmless technology repurposed through Marcus's unique understanding. When the 3rd shift began and the laboratory staff changed, Marcus activated his device with a subtle movement. Throughout the ship, security monitors flickered briefly before resuming normal function. To the Vex, it appeared to be a minor power fluctuation. In reality, Marcus had just created a 3-minute blind spot in their surveillance system. "Now," he said to Thomas, his voice suddenly commanding. Gone was the awkward engineer, replaced by someone with absolute confidence and authority. Thomas didn't hesitate. He gathered the critical samples of his research while Marcus moved to a nearby terminal, his fingers flying across the alien interface with impossible speed. "What are you doing?" Thomas asked, keeping his voice low. "Creating a distraction and securing our escape route," Marcus replied without looking up. "I've been mapping the ship's systems for days. There's a maintenance shuttle in Bay 4 with minimal security." On the terminal screen, Vex symbols flashed rapidly as Marcus executed commands that should have been impossible for a human to understand, let alone implement. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Fire suppression systems in the engine room," Marcus explained with a small smile. "No actual fire, but it will draw attention and personnel away from our path." He pulled a small device from beneath his workstation, a makeshift communication unit he had secretly assembled. "Captain Wilson, this is Marcus. If you can hear me, prepare your people. Cell block security will fail in exactly 40 seconds. Head to Maintenance Bay 4. We're breaking out." In the holding area, Jane's eyes widened at the sound of Marcus's voice coming from a small vent near the floor. Without questioning how he'd managed to create a communication device, she immediately began preparing the crew. "Everyone listen carefully," she whispered urgently. "Be ready to move. Follow my lead and stay together." Exactly 40 seconds later, the energy barriers containing the prisoners flickered and died. The few guards present looked confused, checking their equipment just as the fire alarms began blaring. In the ensuing confusion, Jane led her people out, subduing the guards with swift, coordinated actions. Meanwhile, Marcus and Thomas made their way through service corridors toward the shuttle bay, avoiding the main passageways where Vex troops were responding to the false engine room emergency. "How did you learn to hack Vex systems so quickly?" Thomas asked as they moved. Marcus's expression was focused. "I see patterns. Their technology, their language, their coding. It's all based on mathematical relationships. Once you understand the underlying principles, the applications become obvious." They reached a junction where they would meet the other prisoners if all went according to plan. Minutes later, Jane appeared, leading the group, her face showing relief at seeing Marcus and Thomas alive. "Green, I don't know how you managed this, but explanations later, Captain." Marcus cut in respectfully. "We need to reach the shuttle bay before they realize what's happening." With Marcus guiding them through the service areas, the human crew moved quickly toward their escape. When they reached the maintenance bay, they found 2 Vex technicians, who were quickly overwhelmed by the determined humans. The shuttle was small, designed for repair work rather than passenger transport, but it would have to do. As the crew boarded, Marcus moved to the control systems, interfacing with the Vex technology as if he'd been flying their ships all his life. "Everyone secure yourselves however you can," he called out. "This won't be a comfortable ride." "Commander?" Dren was in the middle of coordinating the response to the engine room alert when a subordinate rushed in. "Sir, the prisoners are escaping. They've somehow accessed Shuttle Bay 4. Dren's eyes widened. "Lock down all launch systems immediately. Deploy security teams." But he was too late. Marcus had already bypassed the bay door controls and launch sequencers. The small maintenance shuttle burst from the Vex ship, accelerating with a speed that the utility craft shouldn't have been capable of achieving. "Impossible," Dren breathed, watching the sensor readings. "The human has modified the shuttle's propulsion systems in minutes." Aboard the crowded shuttle, the crew of the Compassion held on as Marcus pushed the small vessel to its limits. Thomas made his way to the front, clutching a secure container. "I saved the key research samples," he told Marcus. "If we can reach a human outpost, this knowledge won't be lost." Marcus nodded without taking his eyes off the controls. "We're heading for the Galactic Trading Hub at Nexus Station. It's neutral territory with representatives from 47 species, including humans. The Vex won't dare attack us there." Jane joined them at the front of the shuttle. "They're pursuing us," she said, looking at the sensor display. 3 fighter craft closing fast." "They won't catch us," Marcus stated with such certainty that neither Jane nor Thomas questioned him. His hands moved across the controls, making adjustments that squeezed impossible performance from the small craft. "I've modified the engines to operate beyond their designed parameters. We'll reach the jump point before they can intercept us." True to his word, the shuttle reached the faster-than-light jump point with the Vex pursuers still too far behind to prevent their escape. As the stars streaked around them, Jane finally asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Marcus, how did you do all this? The communications, the security override, understanding their technology so completely." For a moment, Marcus was silent, his eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of faster-than-light travel. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but clear. "I've always been different, Captain. I see things others don't. Patterns, connections, possibilities. I've hidden my abilities my whole life because I didn't want to be studied or feared or used as a weapon." He turned to face her, his eyes showing a depth of intelligence that was almost unsettling. "But I won't hide anymore. Not when I can help." "And how exactly do you plan to help?" Thomas asked. "We're still just one small group against an entire Vex fleet." Marcus smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. "Dr. Reed, your medical research combined with what I've learned about Vex technology has given me an idea. We're not going to fight the Vex. We're going to change the rules of engagement entirely." As the stolen shuttle raced toward Nexus Station, Marcus began outlining his plan, a plan so audacious yet so precisely calculated that it left even the brilliant Dr. Reed stunned. The humans had escaped, but this was only the beginning of what would become a legendary chapter in galactic history. Nexus Station hung like a glittering jewel against the backdrop of space, its massive ring structure rotating slowly to create artificial gravity. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species docked at its many ports, making it the busiest trading hub in this sector of the galaxy. When the stolen Vex maintenance shuttle arrived, it caused an immediate stir. Station security surrounded the small craft as it docked, weapons ready. They were not expecting the sight that greeted them. 43 humans in medical uniforms, led by a woman with captain's insignia, and a quiet man whose eyes seemed to take in everything at once. "I am Captain Jane Wilson of the UMSS Compassion, a human hospital ship," Jane announced to the security team. "We request emergency asylum and immediate contact with the human diplomatic mission." News of the human medical crew's arrival spread quickly through the station. Within hours, representatives from the Human Diplomatic Corps had arrived, along with officials from the Galactic Council Observer Team, who documented potential violations of interspecies law. In a secure conference room, Jane and Thomas explained what had happened: the unprovoked attack on their hospital ship, the capture of their crew, and their daring escape. "The Vex claim we were developing biological weapons," Jane explained to the gathered representatives. "It's completely false. We're a medical ship on a humanitarian mission." Marcus sat quietly during this meeting, observing the reactions of the various species present. The Vex had no representative at Nexus Station. They considered themselves above the petty dealings of lesser species, but several of their allies shifted uncomfortably at the accusations. When asked about their escape, Jane simply said, "We had help from an exceptional engineer," with a nod toward Marcus. She had agreed to keep the full extent of his abilities confidential for now, understanding that such knowledge could make him a target. After the initial debriefing, Marcus requested a private meeting with the human representatives. In a smaller, secure room, he finally revealed his plan. "The Vex aren't going to stop," he explained to the shocked officials. "They've convinced themselves that Dr. Reed's regenerative medical technology poses an existential threat to their dominance. They'll come with their full fleet, and they'll target any human settlement harboring medical research facilities. We've already sent warnings to all human colonies," one official said, "but our military vessels are scattered. It would take weeks to assemble a defense force capable of standing against a Vex fleet." Marcus smiled slightly. "We don't need weeks, and we don't need to fight them in the traditional sense." He placed a small device on the table. "This contains the complete blueprint for a system that will render Vex weapons temporarily inoperable without harming their crews." The officials stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible," one finally said. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "Not anymore," Marcus replied calmly. "During my time on their ship, I identified fundamental flaws in their weapons systems, flaws they've never corrected because no one has ever successfully challenged them. Combined with Dr. Reed's research on cellular regeneration, I've created a countermeasure that targets the living components of their biomechanical systems." For the next 3 days, Marcus worked with human engineers and scientists, refining his design and preparing for what they all knew was coming. Dr. Reed joined him, integrating his medical knowledge with Marcus's technological innovations. On the 4th day, long-range sensors detected a Vex battle fleet approaching Nexus Station. Panic spread through the station as merchants and visitors rushed to evacuate. The few military vessels present prepared defense positions, though everyone knew they stood little chance against the approaching force. In the human section of the station, Marcus made final adjustments to a transmitter array that had been hastily constructed according to his specifications. "Will it work?" Thomas asked, watching Marcus's hands move with precise efficiency over the controls. "It will," Marcus replied with quiet confidence. "But we need to broadcast the evidence of their attack on the Compassion simultaneously. The galaxy needs to witness both their aggression and their vulnerability at the same time." Captain Jane entered the room, her face grim. "The Vex fleet has entered the system. They're demanding we surrender all human personnel, especially you two." She nodded toward Marcus and Thomas. Marcus straightened up from his work. "It's time then. Captain, please ensure the transmission of our ship's log data is ready. Dr. Reed, monitor the biological feedback readings once the system activates." As the Vex fleet approached Nexus Station, their weapons charged and ready, Commander Dren received an unexpected communication request from the human engineer who had escaped his ship. Curiosity overcoming caution, Dren accepted the transmission. Marcus's face appeared on his screen. "Commander," Marcus said respectfully, "there's no need for further violence. Your attack on our hospital ship was based on false intelligence. We were not developing weapons." Dren's expression hardened. "Our intelligence is reliable, human. Your medical technology threatens the established order. Surrender now or we will destroy the station and everyone on it." Marcus shook his head sadly. "I was hoping you would listen to reason." He looked directly into the camera. "I want you to know that what happens next will not harm your crews. Unlike you, we don't target innocent lives." Before Dren could respond, Marcus activated his device. Throughout the Vex fleet, ships suddenly lost weapon functionality. Energy cores fluctuated, targeting systems went offline, and propulsion systems reduced to minimal capacity. The mighty warships drifted in space, momentarily powerless but with life support and communications fully functional. Simultaneously, across all communication channels throughout the galaxy, evidence of the Vex attack on the Compassion began, broadcasting clear footage showing the unprovoked assault on an unarmed hospital ship with clear medical markings. On Nexus Station, Marcus addressed the Galactic Council representatives who had gathered in stunned silence as they witnessed the Vex fleet's sudden vulnerability. "The effect is temporary," he explained. "Their ships will regain full functionality in approximately 12 hours. I designed it this way deliberately. We don't seek to destroy the Vex, only to demonstrate that aggression against peaceful missions will not be tolerated." He turned to Dr. Reed, who activated a second transmission. "This is the complete data on our regenerative medical research. It can benefit all species, including the Vex. It extends life, heals injuries that would be otherwise fatal, and improves quality of life across biological differences." The impact was immediate and far-reaching, as species throughout the galaxy witnessed both the Vex's unprovoked violence and their sudden vulnerability, along with the humans' measured and non-lethal response. Perceptions began to shift dramatically. Within days, the Galactic Council, which had previously been little more than a symbolic body, convened an emergency session. For the first time, representatives from 34 species, including reluctant Vex officials, gathered to establish new protocols for medical and humanitarian missions across all territories. Marcus attended this historic meeting alongside Captain Jane and Dr. Reed. As the discussions proceeded, he spoke rarely, but when he did, the entire assembly fell silent to listen. "Today marks the beginning of a new approach to galactic relations," he said during the closing session. "Not one built on military might or technological superiority, but on our shared need for healing, growth, and understanding. The attack on our hospital ship could have sparked a war. Instead, let it be remembered as the catalyst that united us." The Galactic Medical Cooperative was formed that day, with Dr. Reed appointed as its first human director. The Compassion would be rebuilt, larger and better equipped, becoming the flagship of a new fleet of hospital ships that would serve all species without discrimination. As for Marcus Green, he declined all offers of official positions and honors. Instead, he requested resources to establish an interspecies research center focused on integrating technologies for peaceful purposes. Many wondered about the full extent of his abilities, but he shared his knowledge freely, teaching others rather than hoarding his insights. Years later, when the first Vex patients were treated aboard the new Compassion, Commander Dren was among them. His once hostile eyes now filled with grudging respect as he watched humans and Vex medical staff working side by side. "I never understood," he admitted to Marcus, who occasionally consulted at the hospital ship. "We thought power came from keeping others weak. You showed us that true strength comes from helping others become strong." Marcus smiled, the same quiet smile that had once confused his crewmates aboard the original Compassion. "That's the most human insight of all, Commander. We're at our best not when we stand alone, but when we help others stand with us." As Marcus walked the corridors of the new hospital ship, passing medical staff from a dozen different species, he reflected on how a single act of aggression had inadvertently changed everything. The attack on a human hospital ship had awakened not just his own hidden potential, but humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn adversity into opportunity and enemies into allies. The unstoppable genius had changed galactic history, not through domination but through understanding. And that would be his most lasting legacy.